Thank you for joining us this evening. We're hosting this webinar to provide you with some information about pupillage at 5 St Andrews Hill and to give you an insight of what it involves and the application process. We've got several speakers to assist with this. You will hear from myself. I'm Louisa Collins and I'm an extradition practitioner. You'll hear from Francesca Levett, who's an experienced criminal practitioner, from Elisenda Mitchell, who's recently been awarded tenancy after completing pupillage, Joe O'Leary, who is a criminal, professional discipline and other practice areas practitioner, Rebecca Thomas, who will hopefully join us soon, who's going to cover proceeds of crime, and then I will cover a bit of information about extradition at 5 St Andrews Hill. You will see that there is a chat function at the bottom of the screen. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end, so if you have any questions, please enter it into the chat function at the bottom, and then we will endeavour to answer those questions at the end of the session. So I will start. As I say, I'm Louisa Collins. I'm an extradition specialist, and I'm also a pupil supervisor in Chambers. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the pupillages that we've got on offer, and what Chambers offers as part of the package that we have. Now, the Gateway has opened today. We, 5 St Andrews Hill, are going to be offering 3 12-month pupillages via the Pupillage Gateway. So we're offering one crime pupillage, which commences in April 2026, and then 2 pupillages, crime pupillages, that commence in October 26. And you have to make separate applications for each of those rounds. We offer, as part of the pupillage, a varied training programme. So those who get awarded pupillage are able to cover other areas than crime. So you get to exposed to extradition, proceeds of crime and asset forfeiture, and professional discipline work. There is not, in the next round of pupillages, so in the 3 that I've just mentioned, any family pupillage being offered. But we're hoping to recruit a family pupil to commence in 2026 and 2027. And if you go to our webpage, we'll provide information as and when we can commence the recruitment for our family pupillages. We offer, as part of our pupillage package, £40,000. It's made up of a grant of £20,000 in the first 6 months and guaranteed income of £20,000 in the second 6 months. Successful pupils can draw down a proportion of the grant to assist with their bar course if required, or other pupillage related costs. So that's what we offer in terms of a crime pupillage. As I say, if you want to be considered for both, you have to apply for both because they're separate application rounds. I will at this point hand over to Francesca Levett, who is going to give you excuse me, an overview of the pupillage application and interview process. So over to you, Francesca.
Thank you very much, Louisa. Hello, everyone. As Louisa has said, my name is Francesca Levett. I'm head of pupillage at 5 St Andrews Hill, and I'm just going to briefly talk about the schedule for the Gateway. Then I'm going to give you some advice and some insight in relation to the application process, and then briefly talk you through the interview process with us. So, as Louisa has already mentioned, the Gateway has now opened. That means that you can start researching your chambers and looking at what is required and what is available out there. The application process itself, where you can start submitting your applications, starts on the 2nd of January. Now, that doesn't mean to say you have to wait until the 2nd of January to start drafting your answers. You might want to start doing that at an early stage so that you're not rushed. The application process itself closes on the 6th of February. And then we go through interview processes in March and April, and offers go out at 9:30 on the 9th of May. Now, so far as that schedule is concerned, you may have had experience with other sets where they reject by silence, for instance. You might have seen that somewhere. 5 St Andrews Hill don't do that. We always ensure that we respond to every application. So if you haven't heard back from us through the Gateway after you've made your application, then get in touch, as it may be that it's gone into your junk, or it might be that there's some gremlins in the system somewhere. So just to reassure you that every application is responded to. So far as the application process is concerned, I would suggest that as soon as you can, start researching the chambers that you wish to apply for. Obviously, we would love it if you applied to us. We are a leading set, and we have an excellent range of work and experiences available to everybody. But it's right that you do your research and that you apply to a set of chambers that fits your personality. Because as far as we're concerned, we recruit in pupillage with a view to tenancy. And so when we go through this process, we want you to stay with us for the rest of your professional life. So it's important that when you're applying, you make sure that you want to be with the set that you want to be with for the rest of your professional life. So make sure that the chambers itself fits your personality. Make sure that they offer the type of work that you want to gain experience in, and look at their retention rates, because so far as we're concerned, we have a high retention rate. Virtually all of our pupils have a secured tenancy, and they stay with us for a great number of years. So that's an important factor as far as you're concerned. Don't be tempted to apply to a set where they offer 4 to 6 pupillages, but you look at their retention rate and only 1 or 2 are taken on every couple of years or so. So think to the future when you're researching your chambers. Once you've got your shortlist of the chambers that you wish to apply for, then do further research into them. Look at their news section on their website. We offer one in relation to 5 St Andrews Hill. See what they're actually progressing in, what achievements they've made recently, any cases that have appeared in the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court's important work. And it means that when it comes to making your application, you can use the information that you've researched to weld that into your answers, so that we know when we're reading your application that you're interested in not just joining us, but staying with us. So demonstrate why it is you want to apply to us. In relation to the application itself, we consider every single application, and some of those are 10 pages long, some of them are 35 pages long, and it's really important that you inject your personality into it. Now, that may not be the same for every single set, but at 5 St Andrews Hill, we want you to show us your personality. Bear in mind that the likelihood is that those who are applying to us will have reached a certain standard of education. Their grades will be probably very similar to yours. So you need to do something that's going to set you apart from other applicants. And that is by way of showing us your personality. In relation to work experience, there's a section on the form in which you can show us your work experience or your relevant experience. If you have joined a law clinic, if you've participated in an innocence project, if you've attended and qualified for FRU, or participated in education appeals, those sorts of things, put those down on your form. If you've undertaken a huge amount of mini pupillages, tailor your application so that only the relevant mini pupillages are showing on the form. There have been occasions in the past where I've seen a swathe of mini pupillages within the form. None of them applied to crime, and it was very difficult to see how it was that those particular applicants were dedicated and committed to a pupillage in crime. So tailor your application to show us what your relevant experience is. If you have done a huge number of relevant mini pupillages, I would suggest making one entry and listing them all with the dates, and then using perhaps 1 or 2 key things that you've learnt to demonstrate how you've benefited from that particular work experience. So any key or unusual features I would put on them. Whereas if you've done just the 1 or 2 mini pupillages, then in relation to that, you can go into detail as to what you've learned, what you've achieved as a result of undertaking those mini pupillages. Now, we'll be aware, of course, that not everyone has the ability to take weeks and weeks of unpaid leave in order to undertake mini pupillages, and certainly I was in the same position when I was in your shoes. When that happens, explain to us what it is that you've struggled with in relation to getting those mini pupillages, whether it's time, for instance, whether you have caring responsibilities. We take all of that into account. There's a huge amount of importance on individuals that work their way through their education. That's just as valuable at showing a commitment to the criminal bar as it is if you've done tens and tens of mini pupillages. So tell us what your relevant experience is. If, for instance, you have worked in customer services or some other field that's not strictly legal, you can demonstrate how you've managed to deal with perhaps some difficult characters during the course of your employment, which would put you in good stead in relation to Saturday morning court down at the magistrates. In relation to exceptional circumstances, there's always an element of hardship that people suffer that they want us to know about because it might have affected their grades, for instance, or their ability to undertake work experience or voluntary work experience. If you do have exceptional circumstances, by all means, tell us about it, but please do make sure that it is exceptional, because it will actually undermine your application if your exceptional circumstances are, sadly, fairly run-of-the-mill to what everyone else has experienced. We're aware that everyone that will be applying this year will have gone through a period of hardship and turmoil during the lockdown. So that in itself won't necessarily amount to an exceptional circumstance. So I'm not saying don't put in exceptional circumstances, but please do make sure that they are exceptional. In relation, finally, to any achievements that you wish to put on your form, I would simply say be selective. Make sure they are true achievements. If you were milk monitor at primary school or class rep, for instance, in year 7, once you've started at senior school, that's not really going to make any difference to your application. Whereas if you've been elected as captain of your football team, for instance, or you have participated in law clinic and a senior capacity, those are excellent achievements and ones that we would want to hear about. Now, in relation to the interview process itself, the first round interviews are normally in March, and we do undertake a fair number of first round interviews because we like to give an opportunity to a wide range of candidates to give them their chance really to show us what they're made of. As a result of that, we tend to set aside a Saturday where a number of members of chambers come in. We sit in panels of 3 and we go through, I would say, probably about 17 interviews during the course of the day per panel. So we can get through a number of interviews, but as a result of that, it does mean that they are fairly quick. You will be expected to attend at least 30 minutes in advance because you will be given a topical discussion piece that you'll need to prepare and effectively argue your corner. So 30 minutes of preparation, then you'll be coming in, giving us your discussion piece, and then there'll be a brief Q&A after that so that we can get to know you a little bit better. Please don't take it personally that these are only going to be 10 to 12-minute interviews. As I say, we do like to give everybody an opportunity to shine, and it's amazing how much you can portray in just the first few minutes of your interview. So please don't feel that you're being hard done by. Candidates that are successful in relation to the first round will be told fairly quickly. They'll be invited into a second round interview. There's generally only about 10 or 12 candidates that make it through to the second round interview. That will be conducted in front of the entire interview panel. So some of those wouldn't have seen you because they weren't on your first panel. But that will proceed by way of an advocacy exercise. We take into account, of course, the fact that candidates come from all walks of life. Some of them haven't done law degrees, some of them haven't yet done their bar vocational training, and we take that into account. We don't expect the polished article, but we expect a certain amount of common sense and persuasiveness. So after the advocacy exercise, there'll be further questions and answers, your opportunity to ask any questions if you wish to do so. And then, of course, we have to keep everything a secret until the 9th of May when we can relay the results out through the gateway. So I hope that's helpful. That's a brief overview of the application process, what I would like to see in your applications, and also the interview process itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesca. I'm going to hand over now to Elisenda Mitchell, who's going to give us an overview of her experience of pupillage and hopefully give you some helpful information. Over to you, Elisenda.
Thank you, Louisa. So good evening, everyone. I'm Elisenda Mitchell, and I'm one of the newest barristers at 5 St Andrews Hill. And I was reflecting earlier that actually it wasn't too long ago that I think I was sat in your position and listening to an open evening talk that 5 St Andrews Hill did. And actually, what I saw on that occasion formed part of the reason why I wanted to join 5 St Andrews Hill, because of how welcoming and supportive everyone came across. And that supportive atmosphere is something that I've experienced throughout my pupillage at 5 St Andrews Hill and into tenancy. Now, I've been asked to talk about the pupillage experience, so I'm going to start with the first 6 and my experience of that. And what's apparent is from the moment that you join Chambers, you immediately feel supported as a new first 6 pupil. Naturally, you're of course nervous, but Chambers try and do everything to ease you in. We have a buddy scheme in Chambers where you are assigned someone that is a junior member of Chambers that you can go to with any queries that you have. And that's someone that you keep throughout pupillage and even into tenancy. I still find myself asking my buddy questions even now. And that's there just to assist with any queries that you have, even from the first day on your first 6. And during first 6 is when the advocacy session starts. So throughout pupillage, there are advocacy sessions that Chambers run that cover all manner of advocacy exercises, be that a plea and mitigation for crime, or an application in relation to a non-molestation order, so for family. And those advocacy sessions are invaluable. They normally take place once a month. And again, I still find myself thinking back on the feedback that I got during those advocacy sessions when I'm in court today. Normally, it will be 2 barristers that will give up their time, and you'll perform a short piece of advocacy for maybe 10 minutes that you'll prepare in advance, and then you'll be given feedback. And what's particularly important with those advocacy sessions is that they help bridge the gap between bar school and what you're taught in bar school and the courtroom, because there is a difference there in what you learn at bar school and then practical tips and tricks when you're in court. And those advocacy sessions really help with that. And you get the feedback from 2 barristers that are doing this day in, day out. So they're invaluable. And that's one of the things that attracted me to pupillage at 5 St Andrews Hill. And even then, the support continues into your second 6. And one of the important things about pupillage at 5 St Andrews Hill is that support is apparent in the way that the pupillage is structured. That you will have 3 pupil supervisors during your pupillage. And what that means is that you will have the same pupil supervisor at the end of your first 6 and the start of your second 6. So it means that you already have a relationship with your pupil supervisor. So you feel comfortable going to them to ask any questions, which you will inevitably have in those early days when everything is new to you and you're on your feet for the first time in second 6. And even in second 6, that support continues even towards the end. And it's right to say that you are exposed to a number of opportunities really early on. And you're entrusted to do, for example, advocacy in the Crown Court early on, as well as opportunities to start to build your practice, and with a view, as pupillage is with a view to tenancy. So you will have opportunities even in second 6 to do things such as assist with POCA and also extradition matters as well. And I should say that throughout pupillage, you will be given opportunities to do written work for your pupil supervisor. And again, I found the written feedback that you get from your pupil supervisor from that written work incredibly helpful when you're drafting applications yourself when you're in your second 6. What I think is another way that evidences how supportive Chambers is the WhatsApp groups that we have as well. I was looking on the way here, and I think I'm a part of about 3 different WhatsApp groups that are all specifically designed so that there is a space for junior pupils and junior practitioners to ask any questions that they have. Of course, you always have the support of your pupil supervisors in pupillage, but sometimes there might just be a question that might seem to you to be quite a silly question, and you just want to ask someone that's perhaps a little bit more junior, and there are those spaces to do that, and that is one of the fantastic things about pupillage at 5 St Andrews Hill. And even into tenancy, the support continues. And unfortunately, John Oliver can't be here, but I found myself even this week asking John a question about a trial I was doing, as he was my old pupil supervisor. And I found myself going to him to ask something, just to just ask, because that is the support that you feel throughout pupillage and tenancy. So with all that being said, I hope I haven't missed anything, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the experience of pupillage or tenancy in the chat afterwards.
Thank you, Elisenda. That's really helpful. I will now hand over to Joe O'Leary, who is going to give you some information about professional discipline and other practice areas.
Hello, so as you heard, my name's Joe O'Leary. I did my pupillage at 5 St Andrews Hill from 2019 until 2020 and became a tenant in October 2020. My practice now is in crime, extradition, professional discipline, and I'm starting to grow a small pocket practice as well, which is quite a good spread over all the different areas that Chambers does, but by no means all of them. I've been asked to talk about life as a tenant in Chambers from my perspective as someone who is still quite junior, but been here for a few years now and cover those different areas. My view, life as a tenant at 5 St Andrews Hill is a brilliant experience because it does offer up to you such a range of work. Like most people here, the anchor of my practice is in crime, but I have been able to expand into those other areas. Having been a tenant in Chambers for coming up to 5 years now, my practice in crime has obviously brought with it bigger trials, more complex operations, etc., but also a chance to explore other aspects of work outside of general CPS and defence work, but also other prosecutors you wouldn't always think of. So I'm currently instructed by the RSPCA in a case. I've done lots of work for local authorities where their work strays into crime, such as landlord prosecutions, but also crime adjacent practice as well, such as civil orders and so on. And Chambers is really great for exposing you to that area of work. But outside of crime completely, there are areas such as professional discipline, which I find challenging, but a really great area to be in. And Chambers acts for and against a whole stack of regulators, such as the Nursing and Midwifery Council, the General Medical Council, the HCPC, accountancy regulators, tax professional regulators, and many, many others, of which there are probably far too many to name. But in Chambers, you are encouraged to consider areas such as professional regulation or different strands to the criminal world, because it does have those core skills of crime. Obviously, you'll hear from Rebecca Thomas about POCA in a minute, but that's another great area we do. And of course, extradition, which you're going to hear from Louisa Collins about. Extradition is where I also do quite a lot of work, and this is a great example of where you can expand your practice, because it was an area I thought I wasn't really interested in until I joined Chambers, but now it's an area that I really do enjoy working in and have been able to do some quite good cases in. The support you get from the extradition team and people like Louise particularly has been brilliant. Another thing that Chambers does very well is encourages secondments, especially when you're more junior, where you go and you spend, between 3-6 months, sometimes longer, with an organisation or sometimes a firm, and you really become almost a subject matter expert in what they do very, very quickly, and hopefully leads to instructions in the future. I've done secondments at the NMC as well as HMRC. Other members, I believe, have done secondments at the FCA, the SFO, regulatory firms, and they're a great tool which Chambers does recognise can really add to your practice and your skills. Chambers will support you through those. It's also quite nice to get paid regularly every month as well, which always goes down well amongst criminal barristers. But you've heard a lot from Elisenda about support in Chambers and how it's always there. And in every practice team, regardless of area, even if it's not crime, there is a great core of people who will provide you with help and support, and usually those stressed midnight phone calls. We call them at the junior end often a sanity check, because you think you've got something right, you think you know what you're doing, but you're just not quite sure, and you always have someone on hand to phone. I remember when I was a pupil, I phoned Mark Cotter, then QC, on a Saturday morning when I was dealing with something at Luton Mags, and he picked up the phone without thought and helped me out. But also other tenants of your same call will always be on the phone to you, both helping you and you helping them. I think it's safe to say the junior end, Rebecca, hopefully would agree with me, we're on the phone to each other pretty much constantly, because that is how we as a chambers get through things and solve our problems. We do it all as a team. And those WhatsApp groups are really everywhere. Unfortunately, Elisenda, you're probably going to be added to many, many more as the months go on, because that's exactly what we do. We all come together as practice teams. So be it crime, be it pressure regulation, be it extradition, be it whatever Chambers is turning itself to, there will always be a great bunch of people to help you out. And when you become a tenant, that never goes away. And I think that's a really important thing to come across. Just because you become a tenant doesn't mean the help stops. If anything, it only gets stronger. Because you know people that bit better, you can talk to each other that bit more. But life at 5 St Andrews Hill does expose you not just to crime, but to all sorts of other areas too, which could really broaden your practice and make it a much more interesting place to work. But that's what I have to say about 5 St Andrews Hill.
Joe, thank you. That's really, really helpful. And I will then hand over to Rebecca Thomas, who's been able to join us. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, sorry I'm so late. I was travelling back from Basildon Crown Court, which is unfortunately part of the glamour of the job wherever you go at a crime set. I did pupillage in Chambers the year after Joe, and similarly, I'm going to talk a little bit, and not for very long, but about life in Chambers as a tenant. And like Joe, I also have a fairly multidisciplinary practice with roots. Really, all of my practice areas have roots in crime, and I kind of. My main area is the proceeds of crime work, and I also do kind of general crime and extradition. One of the reasons I was attracted to 5 St Andrews Hill in the first place was because I thought that I wanted to do family law as well as crime, and I thought I'd really, really enjoy that. And one of the huge benefits of 5 St Andrews Hill is that when I realised that I actually didn't particularly, 5 St Andrews Hill is a kind of chambers where you can mould and shape your practice according to the things you find you enjoy and the things you don't enjoy. And a lesson I definitely learned early on is it's quite difficult to predict what kinds of work you will like and the benefits and downsides of the different areas of law, particularly when we are a bit handicapped applying for pupillage, in that we only get to see mini pupillages and we don't get to see what the day in, day out grind of the reality of any practice is. So in my view, the benefit to that kind of system, as opposed to going to a set where they exclusively do crime or you're a bit more pigeonholed, firstly, is that the variety of work that lots of junior tenants in Chambers do is very interesting. It is fun to dip in and out of different areas of law on a day-to-day basis. Very candid, it's quite good for money, particularly those of us who, I mean, I'm in the middle of a legally aided criminal trial now. That's some of the most fun I'll ever have at work, but being able to supplement that work with other more lucrative areas does ease the financial burden of becoming a barrister, particularly in those early years. You get to experience new areas of law that you would never really touch on at all in law school. It's very, very difficult. I think extradition has become quite a bit more high profile recently because of things like the Assange cases. But when I was at law school, extradition just wasn't an area that I was aware of or understood. So coming to 5 St Andrews Hill allowed me to dip my toes in that and discover that I quite enjoyed it. And also it enables you to get recognition relatively early in your career. And that really is something quite unique to 5 St Andrews Hill, because we are so specialist in relatively niche areas of law. Like Joe, I've managed to go on to comments where I've been able to put my name out there a bit, and I did a comment at the Financial Conduct Authority. But also there are lots of opportunities to be led. We have an arm in almost every committee for all of the different organisations, be that the Defence Extradition Lawyers Forum, the Female Fraud Forum, the Proceeds of Crime Lawyers Association. That means that you are exposed to contacts and to really good work, I think much earlier than I know people that I was at bar school with at other sets have experienced. So if you're interested in that kind of practice, I would say that our chambers is one of the best chambers. It's certainly realistically in the country to do it. The clerks really encourage it. Other members really encourage it. So I can highly recommend that side of things. I should say, if you're just interested in a pure crime practice, we have lots and lots of genius that do that as well and find that that's what they really love. But realistically, we're one of the few sets that I'm aware of where you really get to be in the driver's seat of your practice from a very, very early stage. I think that those are I've covered my main notes.
Rebecca, thank you. That is a really good insight. I'm going to finish off by dealing with a little bit about the extradition side of things. That's because I head up the extradition team, and I'm also a pupil supervisor. I will, if you're my pupil, I will give you exposure to a lot of extradition work. But even if you're not my pupil, you'll get to see some extradition work through the way the clerks will allocate you to shadow different people during your pupillage. The extradition work in chambers complements the crime work. That's partly because it's a sort of quasi-criminal area of law. And the sorts of things you'll get to see through the extradition practice or the practitioners will be full hearings, appeals or renewal applications in the High Court, lots of mentions, remand hearings, bail applications, review hearings, that sort of thing. And there will also be the exposure to drafting work. I think that's across the board with all areas of law that you'll be exposed to, but certainly you'll be invited to prepare written documentation to show your drafting expertise and to help train you to provide documents that are suitable for court at the end of things. So the extradition work, as I say, it complements the other areas in chambers. You've heard about those other areas, and it works quite well. It's also London-based, which is convenient because often, as you've heard from Rebecca, you may be going to far-flung places in Essex or all over the country, really. But the extradition work is all based in Westminster Magistrates Court in London, and obviously the High Court is in the Royal Courts of Justice. So that is nice and convenient for a London-based chambers. So that's just a brief overview of the sorts of things to expect as part of the extradition package that comes through pupillage. And so that's really all I wanted to add. And I think at this time we'll probably see if anybody's got any questions. I mentioned before that there was a chat function. I actually think there's a specific Q&A function, and something has just popped up. So I will read it out because I don't think other members can necessarily see the questions, or if you can't, I'll read it out anyway. So hi team, thank you for your insights. My areas of interest are crime, family, and commercial. What would you suggest me to make my application stand out of the crowd, as I need to be shortlisted for an interview, and I believe that I'd be a potential asset for 5SAH. So the question really is, what will make an application stand out of the crowd? I mean, I think we could probably, I know that Francesca, that might be suitable for you, given that you are head of the Pupillage Committee.
Sure.
But anybody else then could add in afterwards if they've got any suggestions.
No problem. Well, thank you for the question. I'll come back to what I said before, inject a bit of personality in it. Obviously, it's a matter for you as to how much of that personality you want to inject, but we want to know whether or not you're going to be personable, whether you're going to be interested in our areas of law. And we need to know that when we're introducing you to our solicitors, that they'll be as engaged with you as we will be. So really make sure that that personality comes through. When you've got a spread of interests, it's understandable at this stage. Not everyone wants to put all of their eggs in one basket. So you can demonstrate as part of our application process that you are interested in those key areas. Of course, this year we're only recruiting in relation to crime. So I would recommend, if you want to stand out and demonstrate that you are truly committed to a pupillage that we're offering at this stage, to focus more on the criminal side of your interests as opposed to the other aspects. Of course, one of the benefits of 5 St Andrews Hill is there are a number of practice areas. The family team is growing, but at the moment they're not recruiting for pupillage for this coming gateway. In relation to your commercial interests, of course, that's going to be relevant for things like white-collar crime, as well as Proceeds of Crime Act, and some of the more regulatory type prosecutions and defence work that we do. So by all means, make reference to it, but tailor it to the applications so that we can see that you are truly demonstrating an interest in furthering your career, generally under the sort of umbrella of crime. Of course, if there is a practice area in due course that you want to develop, then once you've got tenancy, you're able to do that. It's not a problem. And the wonderful thing about 5 St Andrews Hill is the clerks team are fantastic. They will have practice meetings with you. They will be interested in knowing how you want to develop and what they can do to help you develop. And they've got so many sources and contacts out there that they'll be able to get you the work so that you can sort of try before you buy and fully invest, if you like, in relation to a career that is going down either the commercial route or the family route or indeed crime. But I do keep coming back to personality. I'd say that's probably the most important thing for your form, and making sure that you come across well, because if you're going to stay with us for a number of years, then you need to be truly yourself.
Thank you. That's really helpful, and I fully endorse that. I think it is, there has to be something personal that comes across. There's quite a few other questions that have cropped up. We've got what are chambers doing to encourage and promote diversity? I know that there we go. Yeah, we can. In fact, Joe O'Leary may be able to give us some assistance on that. So I will hand over to Joe, and then if anyone else wants to chip in, please do.
Within chambers, I sit on the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee that we have. I think as a set of chambers, we do a lot to promote diversity and inclusion in chambers, in particular in the pupillage process. I'm sure Francesca can answer all questions about the specifics of what we do within the application process, but one of those is, for example, we do blind mark. We can't see, I think that's right, in that we don't see the universities you've been to. We strip out as much of that data as the Gateway allows us to make sure we are marking purely on merit and not on background. And when I look at the junior tenants that surround me, we have got such a brilliant range of people from all different backgrounds within chambers and genders and different areas of life. But also within chambers, we contribute quite significantly to the 10,000 Black Interns project, where we have Black interns come through an application process to chambers and spend time with our members. I've certainly had a few people come through that, which is brilliant for chambers of learning. We're not just giving lessons of what we hope is good advice to people coming through, but also we learn a hell of a lot too from the conversations we have. Chambers also supports and runs sessions for the Bridging the Bar organisation. So a few Saturdays every year, people come in and we do some mock advocacy and give tips, ideally in a pupillage interview style. So the sorts of problems that you would have in a pupillage interview, you can have a chance for advocacy and present them through those. So in chambers, we do, I think, do as much as we possibly can to promote it. And I'm sure if Francesca has anything else to add, she will.
Just to add in relation to that, it was really lovely last year when we had some applicants come through for their interviews and recognise some of the mentors on the panel who contributed to Bridging the Bar. And we endorse buddy schemes as well. So anyone that feels that they need some further sort of assistance and advice getting through either the application process or procedure, they can be linked up with a buddy even before they come into chambers. So I know that there's a number of members of chambers through the inns that offer that kind of advice as well. But so far as diversity and inclusion, I can say that all of our applications are anonymized, so we cannot see your name, your age, your location, your university. Everything is completely neutral, so everyone is viewed on the same level playing field as they should be, rightly so.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next one, which is what is the mix of defence prosecution work, or defence stroke prosecution work? I don't know if I know the answer to that. Does anybody else?
I wouldn't be able to give you the firm percentages, but historically we prominently prosecuted. But over the last 3 to 4 years, we have promoted a lot of marketing events in order to further our defence practice. So I would say we are probably about 50-50 now. Certainly from my own perspective, I used to prosecute about 80% of the time. I now prosecute maybe 10% of the time, as I tend to prefer to defend. So we're doing an awful lot to enhance that. But I would say it's about 50-50. The wonderful thing about doing both, of course, is that you get an insight into fielding both corners, so to speak. And it's amazing how helpful it can be when you've prosecuted to understand what sort of material there should be in relation to disclosure requests when you're defending. So I think it keeps people quite balanced.
Yeah, I agree. I think from the extradition side of things, I think it's important to do both if you can, because I think it informs you with what sort of requests you can make to foreign jurisdictions, for example, and how what those lines of communication might be. I mean, the extradition team is probably significantly more defence than they are prosecution, or I shouldn't say prosecution, representing foreign jurisdictions or judicial authorities from abroad. So I think my practice is probably about 90% defence, but there is a mix, and as I completely endorse what Francesca said. I think it's important to try and do both, especially early on if you can. I don't know whether anyone else wants to add to anything there. If not, I'll move to the next one, which is could you talk a bit about how you navigated the uncertainties of the job, in brackets income, which areas you'd like to specialise in, the psychological demand of crime work, and the skills you needed or developed for that? I know, Rebecca, you mentioned a little bit about income and how to sort of balance out sometimes the lower income that you might receive through some of the criminal work with other practice areas. I don't know whether there's anything else you can build upon with that, or yeah.
Sorry, Louisa. What I can say is that the clerks will have very candid conversations with you and will help you shape your practice to meet your financial needs. So that does mean, for example, you can talk to them about not just what kind of work you'd like to do, but if, for example, I know some people, if they're in a position to do so, I know of people who have tried to buy houses in their pupillage year because the pupillage award can help persuade banks to give you a mortgage. So I know you can have a very candid conversation with the clerks about that and what you need to earn in certain years, and they'll help you meet those goals. You are self-employed, so it is fundamentally a lot more uncertain than if you were in receipt of a salary. But people in chambers are very aware of those difficulties and will help you navigate that as best they can. In terms of the psychological demands of the work, that's going to be true wherever you go. Fire St Andrews Hill has a huge support network which not only extends to slightly ranty discussions with people in WhatsApp groups, but genuine emotional support if you're finding things very difficult. So that really does help.
Louisa, can I add to that?
Yes,
that when I came back to work after maternity leave, I had a practice meeting with the clerks who then obtained privately paying work on fixed dates for me, which made it easier for me to, for instance, focus on getting childcare for definite dates rather than the difficulties with warned lists and things like that in the Crown Court. So I can only echo what Rebecca said, that the clerks are really flexible. They'll have their practice meetings with you. You tell them what you want from an earning capacity, and they will meet it, and they have done so far. So I think it's a very safe environment to explore those sorts of things. People don't tend to like to talk money, but that's exactly what the clerks are here for.
Yeah, that is very helpful. Thank you. I don't think we're going to have time to answer all of the questions. So we'll try and answer maybe a couple more. I've seen one that asks, as a criminal people, what can your practice look like to begin with, Mags Court work or Crown Court work? I think both is the answer. I don't know whether anyone wants to add in anything to that. That's the clerks will get you doing Crown Court work early on. There's a large demand for it. I think what else is there anything that anyone wants to answer in particular? I think there's a question about redacting immigration status during the paper sift. I don't know whether that can be quickly addressed by you, Francesca. I think your answer before was that your everything's made anonymous, so you don't have information about background. So
we don't have that kind of information, no. But if there's a particular issue, then it's worth getting in touch with us in advance. If you are concerned about your ability to apply, then by all means get in touch first of all. Serena Mignot, who is one of our clerking team, assists greatly in relation to that. And if there is a query, it can remain anonymous. If it goes to her, then she can ask an open question to us on an anonymous basis to see if there's something that we need to run through bar standards, for instance, or if there's something that we can do to assist in relation to that side of things.
All right. I think we'll just quickly answer one last one. There is one which asks, is it negative if someone is evidently only interested in pure crime? Is there anyone who can answer that?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
I'm quite sure I said I wanted to do pure crime, so I hope that allays anyone's concerns.
Yeah, I think that's all right. No, there is no negativity from it at all. You might get people like me who head up the extradition team trying to persuade you otherwise and working on you, but there's certainly no negative aspect to that. So I think we'll have to wrap it up there because we've overrun. I don't know if there's any other mechanism by which we can answer questions, but if there's something you desperately want to ask, perhaps you can channel it through to one of the to whoever sent you out invite to the webinar. There we go. Email Tess Nefranovsky, who sent out the invite to the webinar. So there's your answer. But all that leaves for me to say is thank you very, very much for attending and good luck with your application process.